the Shop, episode 201, Igniting Your Curiosity with Cody Gough of the Curiosity Daily Podcast. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show, and of course, I'm so happy to have you along today. And what a wonderful episode we've got. Kind of a shorter one, but is just packed full of a lot of great thoughts around the subject of curiosity, and you're not going to want to miss that. Now, if you have not yet subscribed to Keys to the Shop, I would encourage you, please do so by just hitting the subscribe button wherever you're listening to this show. You could be on Stitcher or Overcast or iTunes, wherever that happens to be. You'll always be updated with the newest episodes and Founder Fridays, the Thursday episodes of Shift Breaks, and these main episodes that come out every Tuesday. There's a lot there. It's about 9 episodes every month, and we like to, get a lot of great and relevant and actionable content to you all the time. And so, subscribing, really good thing to do. If you want to leave a review for the podcast or a rating over on iTunes, that would be greatly appreciated. It really helps the rankings of the show when people are searching for things like coffee shops and coffee. So this information can get to more people sooner. Sharing the show with friends also does the same thing. And thank you so much for all of you who have already done that. Now, today's episode is brought to you by the wonderful Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is one of the world's best specialty coffee equipment suppliers because not only do they stay up to date and scour the earth for the best coffee equipment they can find, but they also then work with you to match that equipment with your specific needs. So if you're looking to start a coffee shop or you already have one and you need to re-up your equipment or level up your equipment a little bit, or you're opening a second shop, which congratulations on that, I would recommend Prima Coffee for all of those situations to be the people you work with to get your commercial coffee equipment, be it a espresso machine, grinder, brewer, hot water towers, or even things like sinks and under-counter refrigeration. They've got you covered over at Prima Coffee. You want somebody who you can trust to help you with these decisions because it's a big investment. The equipment for your store, you need an advocate for you and what's right for your situation. For that, I feel like Prima Coffee is the perfect choice. So go visit them on their website, prima-coffee.com/keys. I know you're going to be happy working with them. prima-coffee.com/keys. Today's episode is also brought to you by Pacific Foods and their Pacific Barista Series. So the Barista Series is a line of plant-based performance beverages that are designed for baristas and with the feedback of the barista community. That means when they're designing these beverages, be it the almond, soy, oat, coconut, rice, or hemp even, they are doing so with a lot of feedback from the best baristas and professionals in the world, bench testing this stuff in real environments to make sure that it's going to perform when you bring it into your store. So there's a lot of care that goes into these products, and that's why they're called performance beverages. They invest heavily in supporting the specialty coffee industry and baristas all over the world. These products are just a testimony to that fact. So I would encourage you to try out the Barista Series in your store. Bring it in and test it out with your coffee. Taste it with your staff, taste it with your customers, and see what I mean. I really do think you're going to be pleased with this, and couldn't recommend them enough. So go to pacificfoods.com to learn more. Follow the link in the show notes. It'll take you to the food service section of pacificfoods.com. See how the Barista Series can elevate the plant-based offerings in your cafe. All right, so today we are going to be talking all about curiosity. We are going to be igniting your curiosity with Cody Gough. So Cody Gough is a radio and podcast veteran and is the executive producer and co-host of the Curiosity Daily Podcast, which is an award-winning daily podcast from curiosity.com that helps you get smarter about the world around you every day in less than 10 minutes. They feature a wide variety of topics and research-based life hacks and things like that. It's really fascinating, and that's how I I found Cody was just happening upon this this podcast. It was really fascinating, and I loved what I learned there. So happy to have him on the show. Beyond that, Cody's background includes more than a decade in on-air and production roles with Chicago's 720 WGN Radio. He's also a seasoned podcaster with the GonnaGeek Podcast Network, an accomplished commercial actor, and former cooking show host. So as the producer of this show, Cody has got to learn a lot. He's got to research a lot. He's got to describe and talk about a wide variety of things that you and I would really benefit from learning. We are definitely going to be igniting our curiosity in this interview as we talk about curiosity as a subject. We talk about how nurturing a sense of curiosity will benefit you as a leader, as a barista, and just a hospitality worker in general. And we also cover what we can do to start that process of becoming more curious as a person and reap the benefits of learning about a wide variety of things in life. There are a lot of benefits for sure. So let's get right to it. Here now is my conversation about igniting your curiosity with the host of the Curiosity Daily podcast, Cody Gough. Cody, welcome to Keys to the Shop. So glad to have you on the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me. This is really exciting.
I'm super excited myself. I am a fan of the show, the Curiosity Daily podcast, where I first heard you, and I have been kind of talking about curiosity and different facets throughout the history of this show, and we've had different episodes allude to it, and now I feel like you're the perfect person to sort of dive into this subject as a full episode about curiosity. So excited to sort of dive in with you here. I think what would be good to for our listeners is to hear a little bit about your professional background and how you ended up, in such a unique podcast as the Curiosity Daily Show. Talk to us a little bit about your path there.
Yeah, definitely. And curiosity is super important, so I'm happy to talk about it anytime. So I won't go into my full work history, but I have a very weird background because I studied radio and television production in college. But then after that, I started working almost right away part-time at WGN Radio in Chicago, and kept working there part-time and had other full-time careers on the side. It wasn't even necessarily that I was pursuing a full-time career in radio. I just like doing it kind of for fun. So you have to keep that in mind that while I'm working weekends at WGN for 11 years, I'm doing other stuff full-time, marketing jobs, and I worked at a call center doing recruiting for a while, and just kind of jumped around. And that brings me to how I got to curiosity. So I was actually managing social media marketing for a global management consulting firm, A.T. Kearney. And my job, this is kind of funny the way this happened. My job was partially running their social media accounts and partially training their senior partnership on social media. So how do I make an optimized LinkedIn profile? And how do I look really good and create a good digital brand? And the idea behind that was to get more business for the company. Like if I Google a senior partner and I see a really cool LinkedIn profile, cool, great. They've got a great resume. I trust this person. I'll get business. And what was so funny about it is there was a part of me that was kind of like, I don't know how effective this is. Like, is a CEO really going to Google our senior partner and see that they're really good at their job? And is that going to make a difference? And out of the blue, I get an email, I get a message on LinkedIn from the CEO of Curiosity.com, a startup, popular science website that writes short articles about science and research and culture and history and just kind of random stuff that can satisfy your curiosity. And he's like, hey, looks like you know how to do podcasts based on your LinkedIn profile. We've been thinking about doing a podcast. Would you like to hop on the phone to chat? And 2 weeks later, I had a job at Curiosity.com doing their podcast.
Wow.
So the very thing that I was kind of doing that I wasn't sure how effective it was literally is what got me a job. And so I joined and launched their podcast, which was just called the Curiosity Podcast at the time. And then we transitioned in April 2018 to Curiosity Daily. So we published episodes. It was 6 days a week. Now it's 5 days a week. It's about 10 minutes a day to give you just a few quick stories to satisfy your curiosity. And that's what we do now.
Wow. So you're the producer of this show, and one of the hosts of the show as well. You started with this initial level of, natural curiosity, I suppose. But as you go into the podcast and you discover more things and you work with curiosity.com, I wonder, since starting the show, how has your approach to knowledge growth and maybe your own level of curiosity been impacted by all of that?
Yeah. So what's been cool about the show is there's stuff I didn't think I was curious about or cared about at all that I totally do now and think is a lot more interesting. And I think the more I learn about more things, the more I realize how much more interesting some stuff is than I would have ever thought. So I'll give you an example. Geology. You might think rocks. Okay. Right. There's rocks. How much do I care about rocks? What's the deal with geology? But we did a story about a study that suggests that an ancient supernova may be the reason why humans walk upright. And I'll connect the dots here for you because this kind of blew my mind. And this study makes some assumptions, but it really is rooted in a lot of science research and a lot of geology. Long story short, basically, an ancient supernova goes off, which theoretically, if supernovas increase cosmic rays, which is still kind of theoretical, but assuming supernovas create more cosmic rays, that means more cosmic rays are hitting the Earth, which means that generates more lightning. More lightning means more fires, because one of the main causes of fires, wildfires back in the day, millions of years ago, was lightning strikes. More fires means more savanna, so more flat, plains without trees and things. And an evolutionary advantage when there's flat savanna is having height. If you can stand up tall and you can see over those plains, you've got a major evolutionary advantage. So in that way, and all of this information comes from geological records. They're able to identify, they can kind of backdate when there was more lightning and when there were more fires. And so geology, it connects an astronomical event from light years away to literally humans walking upright. And that's the kind of thing that it just kind of blows your mind. You're like, oh, wow, that kind of combines astronomy and geology and evolution and just all these different things in ways that you would never expect. So that's how my curiosity has really been piqued is before, if my co-host, our managing editor, Ashley Hamer, if Ashley had said something to me like, hey, we're going to do this story about big black holes, 2 years ago, I might have been like, I really don't care about black holes. I've had enough of black holes. I don't need more black holes in my life. Can we please move on from black holes? But, a lot of times now I just have an open mind and I'm like, cool. What is cool about this black hole? What does this black hole tell us about the universe and about our lives? And so it's those connections you don't necessarily expect to see, which is really, just kind of opened my eyes to new possibilities.
That's really interesting, because then you would approach maybe not just the subjects that you're talking on the podcast about with that level of curiosity, but I imagine it's the kind of thing where now that you've kind of switched your mode of thinking and made these new connections, that your assumption is that there's something there rather than there's nothing there, or you're assuming that there's nothing there. You're assuming now, it seems like, that there's more to the story than what meets the eye, right? So that, it seems like it would impact your daily life in the most, even maybe the mundane ways.
Yeah, it does. And you've probably heard people say stuff like, listen to, if you're talking about politics, let's say, which we don't touch politics on our podcast ever, but you've probably heard this, right? You kind of want to know what the other side is saying. Or you don't want to stay in your bubble. So let's say you love CNN. Somebody might say it might behoove you to go watch Fox News for a couple hours, just to kind of have an idea of what's out there. And same with, if you're a big Fox News fan, maybe turn on CNN for a couple hours and see what the difference is. I see a similarity with Curiosity Daily, and not to get super self-promotional, but I do want to make the point that let's say you're really interested in astronomy. You're going to go download Neil deGrasse Tyson's Star Talk, and you're going to hear about astronomy, and that will satisfy your curiosity about astronomy. Great. Okay, cool. There's lots of specialty podcasts like that. Our decision to brand ourselves Curiosity is that you're curious about everything. So in one episode, you're going to get maybe something on astronomy, but then maybe something on personal psychology or like a life hack for how to sleep better. And then you might get something on the history of like the Dutch tulip mania when tulips cost, as much as like a mansion. So you get a little bit of history, a little bit of this kind of science, a little bit of that kind of science. So it's kind of like a sampler or like a flight of beers. If you go into a bar, maybe you wouldn't have ordered any one of those individual things off the menu, but you'll get the little sampler and you might be surprised that you like other stuff. So, our show's one example, but I use that in my personal life. Yes. As if I see a commercial for something or hear an ad for something, even if it sounds like nothing I would ever imagine is something I really care about, I still might check it out because you never know. And I'm more open to recommendations now too. Somebody says like, oh, there's this show on Netflix and it's about X and Y. Even if my first instinct is to go, that sounds stupid, it sounds horrible, I don't care about 18th century England or whatever it is, but maybe I'll sit down and I'll watch Downton Abbey anyway. I don't watch that show, so I don't actually know when it takes place, but it feels like 1800s or something like that.
Yeah, this is really making me think a lot about how I think it was Charles Duhigg's book. I'm going to butcher it. It's like Better, Faster, Stronger or something to that effect, about how some of the most notable minds in business have the ability to connect disparate ideas from other areas of life that aren't directly linked to, I don't know, like 3M. Like you make duct tape. They make more than that. But, they don't necessarily get innovation just by thinking about the products that they make, but they borrow from other places where maybe a hyper-focused CEO would just be like, well, why am I even going to consider the, how sheep are herded or something like that? I don't know. It could be something like that. And there's a business breakthrough because you found out that it actually matters for how you organize your factory floor. In fact, I think that you have focused on the show on something called the Temin effect that is somewhat related to that. And I wonder if you could elaborate on this, because a lot of people listening to the show are so buried in their own work, in their own worlds, isolated in the offices and things like that. And this sounds like kind of a lifeline to innovation that a lot of people want but don't know how to get.
Yeah, absolutely. The Temin effect is one of my favorite stories we've ever run. So there were a couple research studies. Basically, there was actually a study that gave a group of, I believe it was medical school students at the University of Pennsylvania. They were given custom art training lessons at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. And so they learned stuff like how to identify colors and shapes and ask creative questions and support their claims and their ideas about a given work of art. And then there was another group, control groups and other people to compare against. So after they were given this art training, these groups of medical students were all tested on how well they could describe not only various works of art, but also retinal scans and photos of people with various eye diseases. And the group that had that actual art training showed a lot of improvement in their observational and descriptive skills, but they were also better than the other group at describing every image, including the medical ones. So you might think art lessons, cool, okay, I can tell a Rembrandt from a Monet, what's the big deal? But no, it's helping them actually analyze retinal scans. And that might seem kind of specific to eye care, but David Epstein and Malcolm Gladwell actually have come up with this term called the Temin effect. And it's named after biologist and Nobel laureate Howard Temin. And Howard Temin, Nobel laureate, kind of a big deal. He also happens to really enjoy reading about philosophy and literature. And Epstein and Gladwell are like, hey, you know what? Reading about philosophy and literature really helped Temin think outside the box and do better work. And they also argue that Nobel Prize winning scientists at large have more hobbies than the average person or even your typical scientist. So, I mean, some of the top performers, literally winning Nobel Prizes, have a lot of different hobbies, and they do a lot of other things. And actually, on top of that, this could be really interesting to your listeners also. A lot of studies that we have run have found that the highest performing employees at most companies take the most vacation time. So this whole idea that our society is kind of created of just, work really hard, put the axe to the grinder all the time is really not good. It's not actually accurate. The data doesn't support the idea that if you work a 70-hour week, you'll be better at your job. In fact, the more time you take off and the more hobbies you have and the more interests you have outside of your profession and your day-to-day, the better you're going to be at your job, because you'll be able to take all those other skills from and just other lessons and just other points of view from your other interests and put it into your job there. So pro tip, take more vacation days.
That makes a lot of sense. The rested brain is probably going to be a little bit more sharp at the end of that. And plus, when you're talking about the outside hobbies, I'm thinking, and it's kind of two forms of optimization, because you're also experiencing a lot of different aspects of life that you would have withheld from yourself if you thought you only needed to, double down on your field of study only to improve in it. But also, it seems like what you've experienced with hosting the show and change of how you approach information and opportunities to learn, that it also benefits you because your curiosity is in high gear about your own field. Like, you're a coffee person who does take an art class or goes and learns an instrument or another language, and maybe that turns on something in your brain that allows you to connect those ideas, but then also maybe you're just in learning mode. Because I see that in students too, like when I've hired college students, and they're they're doing well in school, and they're like in the midst of just like absorbing information and some reading all the time in lots of different fields. They tend to be, and this is just my my experience, so your mileage might vary, but they tend to be a little bit more sharp and on the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, your ability to just absorb new knowledge and even just ask questions, right? Like maybe you're working in a coffee shop and you start to make something. You're like, why is it made like this? Why is the milk at this temperature? Like, little things like that. Or it could be a lot bigger. Like if you're running a business, or even if you're just really observative in wherever you're working, you look at the door and you're like, why does it swing in instead of swing out? Wouldn't this be more efficient if this stool was moved over there? There's little things that if you just ask these tiny questions, that can end up making a really big change. And so, yeah, absolutely. Just that openness and that just kind of like trying to stay in that mode of asking questions is good. Sometimes it can be tiring and a little challenging even to kind of keep up with, right? Like if you're constantly questioning everything, then you're like a 3-year-old, and as anyone with a 3-year-old is aware, I'm sure that can get tiring for everyone involved. But in general, yeah, that just trying to maintain that curiosity as much as possible and bringing in new experiences from other things is always a good thing.
Well, I want to draw this into a little bit more of the coffee world. And as we're talking, I'm reminded of why I wanted to have you on the show. This is really fascinating. And I also, this show is a very niched down show. It's coffee service workers and retail environments, and people would be tuning into this for specific information about that, like a 1, 2, 3 approach to, coffee subject, fill in the blank. Having talks like this, I think, is really nice, because then it kind of encourages people to step outside that and say, well, the answers to your question don't always lie in the most obvious place. So with that in mind, when we look at what we do in the service industry, we work with people, and I wonder how this benefits us in hospitality. What are some applications of and benefits of having a heightened sense of curiosity or even outside interest to somebody serving people coffee?
Yeah, sure. It's a great question. And for a little extra background, one of my first jobs out of college was Starbucks employee, certified barista, for whatever that's worth. So yeah, I did that for not super long, but I did that for long enough to have some experience with it. And I was struck by my coworker Jared. And I had first moved to the city. I didn't really know a lot of people. Jared was a few years older than me, and every single person that came into that coffee shop, every time they paid, they would do the transactional thing. What am I going to have? Cool. Here it is. Every single customer, he would said, how's your day going today? Or what are you up to today? Or if we were working in the evening, he'd say, what are you doing tonight? And that simple thing, that's just the simplest question, right? It seems like small talk, and I guess it technically is, but the results that I saw, I'll never forget. It was just extraordinary. I mean, the percentage of people that opened up to him immediately was outstanding. It just, you would never think that people are so happy to just be spoken to. And it was just this simplest little question. He didn't have to ask, like, what do you do for your day job? Or, like, how's your face? It didn't have to be that specific. Just how you doing? And there's actually, I should just let your listeners know also, maybe you're terrified of this, right? So if you're listening and you're like, I do not want to talk to strangers. I've had a bad experience with people in the past coming up and asking them how their day is going, and they don't want to talk, and they just want to get their coffee. Like some people say they just want to get their coffee. You think that, but University of Chicago researchers actually did a study with people commuting in Chicago on a train. And they kind of tested this idea that no one wants to talk to strangers. So they had commuters fill out a questionnaire, and they're like, how do you think you would respond if someone struck up a conversation with you, or if you struck up a conversation with someone, just started talking to a stranger? And perhaps not surprisingly, almost everyone that took this questionnaire is like, that sounds terrifying. I hate this idea. I would be miserable. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be the worst commute ever. And the researchers then had those people like deliberately strike up conversations with strangers. And they had a severe misunderstanding of the social engagement. It turned out that when they compared the responses, there was just a huge gap between, basically the commuters who chatted with strangers in real life had the most pleasurable commutes. And it was the furthest removed from what they had filled out in the questionnaire. When they imagined that experience, like I said, they pictured it as just the worst. And, psychologically, the researchers suggest this is part of it's a fear of rejection. But based on all their data, the people were happier actually talking to strangers almost every time they did it. And this is a lot more than a 50-50 chance. So if you're feeling lonely, or you're feeling curious at all, or you just want to give a little extra punch to that person's day, just try striking up a conversation. And I do this now when I am shopping as a shopper. Like if I'm checking out at the grocery store, or every time I get into a ride share, if I order like an Uber or Lyft, every single time I'm like, how's your day going? And sometimes you get a big answer. Sometimes you get a fine. And you know what? They do just want to get their coffee. But you know what? That's fine. They're not like, no one's going to be angry at you for saying like, how's your day going? No one's going to be like, how dare you ask me how my day is going, So I think that basic curiosity of just like asking anything of any customer that comes in, maybe you see him multiple times. Why do you come in here? Do you live around here? You know what? Maybe not that, because that could be creepy, but just any kind of a little small talk, that comes from your curiosity. If there's something you're genuinely curious about, like, where'd you get that bag? It's cool. Hey, I like your shoes. Where'd you get them? And that kind of stuff. You'd be amazed with the conversation, or maybe you wouldn't be amazed. Maybe you already work with a Jared like I did, but really that stuck with me. That was like more than 10 years ago. And I still remember just that immediate human connection that he made. I
like that now you do it. And part of that inspiration is obviously it's from Jared. That if you are the one to start this, you might be the one to have a customer also then leave your coffee shop and do that for somebody else. It's almost like a chain reaction of paying it forward in a sense. Like giving people permission to reach outside the monotony of the transactional nature of a coffee shop. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we do feel like if the momentum is interrupted, then we start to freak out a little bit. And it feels like we do that with our own knowledge base, with our own skill sets, especially as we become adults. It feels like, well, I should be fine with what I know now. And so I'm just going to seek opportunities that only test me on the things that I currently know. And so we sort of, it feels like we would, it's like a self-sabotage where we atrophy that part of ourselves that would become adept at growing and increasing knowledge and maybe even increasing the pleasure we derive from life and relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. It also, it's funny you said paying it forward. Just this week, we recorded an episode about paying it forward. And actually, there's some research that suggests that paying it forward does have a real effect. Researchers basically just tested it in a classroom and was like, do something really small and nice for somebody. And over the course of the study, the people that were doing this also received more acts of kindness, or it was actually around the office. And basically everyone just felt happier and felt better. So try the tiny compliments with your coworkers too. It can get repetitive sometimes, especially if you're doing the morning rush and you're just cranking out the drinks real fast at a breakneck pace. It can be nice to just be like, hey, I like your hair today, or whatever it is. Or to avoid workplace harassment, just saying something like, I like the way you did that, or dude, you're crushing it today. You're just whatever it is, just any tiny little things is always just it's always nice. And paying it forward is real. So yeah, don't underestimate that.
Well, that kind of brings me to the question of what we can do, like some practical steps that you would suggest we do to increase our curiosity, both from things you've learned on the show and also just the your experience as somebody who's had his curiosity increased through the experience of this show and having Jared's in your life, et cetera. What kind of things do we do like this week to start this process?
So the thing is, everyone is curious in some area of their life. Everyone. It's pretty much a human thing. Chris, I'm sure you're curious about something, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
What is it?
Well,
tell me.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess right now, off the top of my head, I would say I'm curious about the rules that dictate the growth of crystals inside geodes. Dude,
that's awesome. That's so cool. I love that answer. And it's super specific and great. And the reason I ask is the number one thing you can do, and also this goes for bosses. There's some research that I won't get into, but basically some research suggested from SurveyMonkey and INSEAD, the academic institution, that bosses don't encourage curiosity as much as they think they do. So whether you're a boss or you're a parent or you're just you, really the core takeaway is that everyone is curious about something, and that's what you should cultivate. So it's not something you need to force. It's not, you shouldn't listen to this podcast and then say, oh man, I've got an assignment, I have to go be curious about something. That's not the goal. You're sitting there listening to this or driving or walking or whatever, and I'm sure that there's something you want to know more about and you're curious about. Explore that more and see where it takes you. The classic example is, how many times have we all gone on Wikipedia and we want to read one article, and then we say, wait, what's that reference? And then you click on that, and then you say, wait, what's that reference? You click on that, and all of a sudden you were first reading about Colombian coffee, and suddenly now you're reading about the Russian Revolution or Dostoevsky or something. And you're like, how did I get there? Your curiosity will be sparked and ignited the more you're exposed to just things in general. So it's really the main takeaway. Just cultivate the curiosity and explore the curiosity of what's already naturally there. You don't even need to do anything. There's no work involved whatsoever. You're curious about what the 2020 presidential candidates are their platforms are. Cool. You're going to read a bunch about that, but then you might, be interested in the history of something, or how other countries do something, or what cultures are like in other countries. And then suddenly you may be reading a book about the history of Brazilian something or another. There's so many rabbit holes you can go down. You just got to have that initial trigger. And sitting around and watching Netflix, like, yes, some shows will pique your curiosity a little bit, but for the most part, you'll maybe be invested in stories and certain characters and things like that. So read books, read articles, download podcasts, and maybe even check out some things that you don't think you would be interested in, or just have an ancillary connection to what you'll be interested in. But there's just so many ways to explore new things by exploring the stuff you already care about. And I think that's that's really key.
Well said. Well said. Speaking of things that are kind of new pieces of information, or they may be ancillary to what you're currently doing, I wonder if you have any to kind of wrap us up here, any kind of amazing or unbelievable things that you've learned in the course of doing this show that you would share with us to close us out here.
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, and it's really hard. We're at past 500 episodes, averaging at least 3 stories an episode. So that's a lot of podcasts. So I have a quick kind of fun story, and then a life hack that I learned. That's like my favorite life hack that you can walk away with, and everyone can walk away with and have a better life. So the fun story is we interviewed this guy, Brian Davis, who is the founder of Lost Spirits Distillery. I don't know if you're a whiskey drinker.
Bourbon, whiskey with bourbon. We're in Louisville, Kentucky, or I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, so it happens.
That's right. I keep forgetting. You told me that like 4 times. I love Louisville. I got to visit like 10 years ago. It was the best. I love it. So Brian Davis, this guy, he studied theater in college. He was like a theater set designer. And he and his girlfriend just picked up and moved to Spain after he graduated to open an absinthe distillery, because he liked to drink and he liked absinthe. And this was right around the time absinthe started to be legalized in, I want to say, like the US or some other places. There was some economic reason, and he was like, hey, I'm gonna catch this on its way up and make a bunch of money. So he did that, but then moved back to the US. And what's cool about him is he figured out a way to use chemistry to age rum and I want to say bourbon 20 years in 6 days. And it's because he's like, look, if you want to sell 20-year-old aged liquor, you've got to wait 20 years, which is kind of a long time and kind of takes a lot of money. So he taught himself chemistry to do this. And I was like, how did you teach yourself chemistry? And he literally was just like Wikipedia and science articles. And, you don't know something, you click that, you don't know something, you click that. Huh. And he just figured it out. And he explained on an episode, like a very early episode of our podcast, exactly how he did it. He talked about how chemistry isn't about recreating what nature does, but faster. But like in the case of aging spirits and having like the barrel kind of do these certain things, he was able to basically recreate that process more quickly using light, like by exposing the spirits to a certain type of light. It created the chemical reactions and would achieve what would normally take 20 years in like 6 days. Wow. So this guy just taught himself to do this. Again, curiosity, right? He's like, why have liquor distributors not figured this out yet? And he gave a lot of reasons. Part of it is like there's not that much incentive to do it, the return on investment, stuff like that. But yeah, you can accomplish a lot by just being really curious. And I mean, he's right. Basically, the entirety of human knowledge is kind of on the internet, available to almost everyone. So true. The sky's the limit. Now, this guy's kind of an autodidact, kind of a bit of an exceptional dude, right? So don't feel bad if you're not teaching yourself how to like reinvent the industry. But it's funny talking about the 10-minute effect. Maybe just by listening to this podcast, now you're sitting there thinking about how to do this with coffee or something similar with coffee. Who knows? So that's the like fun story. So people are capable of extraordinary things, and never sell yourself short. Theater set designer, and he's got his distilleries in the Los Angeles area now, and I guess the tour of the distillery is phenomenal. So if you're in the LA area, check it out. I'm really looking forward to checking it out next time I'm out there. But the life hack story I want to say really quickly is, I don't know if you ever do this, but Chris, do you ever hit the snooze button when your alarm goes off?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Right. So I did until I learned about some research about why you should never hit the snooze button. Are you ready for this one?
Ready.
So your body temperature naturally warms up a couple hours before your body is ready to wake up. Your body has these circadian rhythms that throughout the day, your body temperature is actually not the same throughout the day. So if your alarm clock wakes you up before you're ready, your body temperature is at its lowest, and braving your cold bedroom can be really hard, right? But going back to sleep will make your morning harder, because first off, waking up at different times every morning will disrupt your internal alarm. And that makes it hard for your body to know when it's supposed to start getting sleepy at night, basically, right? And so you're also giving yourself like sleep inertia. It's that kind of groggy feeling you get after you wake up really abruptly from a deep sleep. But anyway, the problem is that when you drift back off after hitting snooze, your body may enter a deeper sleep stage than it was in before. And that could make the groggy feeling even worse. So the result is that even if it might feel like you're getting more rest, you're actually making yourself more tired. You're doing the opposite of what you're trying to do. You're like, oh, I'll get a couple more minutes of rest. No, you're getting into a deeper sleep and making it harder to get up. So we did this story and I stopped hitting snooze and my life has been better, just straight up. It sucks. It really sucks that minute or two when that goes off, you don't want to get out of bed. I get it. But I swear to you, if you just don't hit snooze, if you just get up, get out of bed, go to the bathroom, whatever, get some water, start your day, within 5 minutes, you'll be fine. So
man,
that's my pro tip.
That's great. That's great stuff.
Yeah.
That's definitely information we don't want to sleep on. So I'm definitely not going to hit snooze as much or at all. From here, I've heard that you shouldn't do that, and when I haven't, it really works. The kind of the way you say. This conversation has really been great, and I feel like I just want to go and learn about a bunch of stuff, and maybe even take myself up on my own curiosity even more, and start to look into a little bit more of that inside geode crystal growth stuff. So thank you so much for being on the show, Cody, and highly recommend your podcast to everybody. Where can we go to find more information about what you do, subscribe to the show, and all that good stuff?
Yeah, it was really a pleasure, Krista. Thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff. And it should be noted, I have no background in science, and I didn't know anything really. I was not a good science student in high school. So anyone can do this stuff. You just got to be curious. So our website is curiositydaily.com, and you can find our whole archive. And what's cool about our website is you can search in the search bar for any keyword. And like I said, we cover a lot of different topics. So if you just want to start with a certain subject, just search in the search bar and we're right there. So curiositydaily.com. And I'm very active on Twitter. My handle is @producercody. I'll hold over from when I was just a producer and not a host. And our podcast and curiosity.com is now a part of the Discovery family of brands.
Oh, great.
Like Discovery is in, Discovery Channel. So you will hopefully be hearing and seeing a lot more of us in the near future. We've already had the opportunity to interview some really cool like TV hosts from Science Channel and Travel Channel on our show. And they just have they're just so passionate about what they do. It's incredible. So keep an eye on Curiosity Daily, and you can listen on any podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all that. Also, real quick, if you have an Amazon Alexa, I hope I didn't just wake up anybody's device. If you use, there's a feature called a flash briefing. It's basically like a quick couple-minute news update every day where you can pick your sources. Like I want to hear from, let's say like MSNBC and BBC and whatever, whoever has like a little couple-minute update. We're available as that too. So if you go on your Amazon flash briefing like directory and you search for Curiosity, you can get us as part of your morning update. We're a little different since we're closer to 10 minutes. So we're longer. We're more like a morning show than just like a quick news brief. But a lot of people have found us that way and really enjoy that. So if you wake up to a little news brief, I would recommend that. But we're everywhere else podcasts are found, and you can find info on all of that on curiositydaily.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cody. This is really fantastic, and can't wait to hear more episodes.
Definitely. Thanks, Chris.
Well, I hope that this episode really did work to ignite your curiosity. And the final admonition from Cody there for us, I think, is a perfect way to take the next step. I was not expecting him to ask me about what I'm curious about, but when he did, and when I was on the spot and, we're recording, I just kind of defaulted to what came up to my mind first. And it's actually something that I really am interested in. I actually have a few really cool geodes on my desk next to my recording equipment, and I've never really taken the time to research that a lot or at all. And so as a result of that, I feel like, man, I'm going to learn more about this. And that's the kind of thing that I hope that this did for you. If there's a little thing that you're interested in, even if it's, it doesn't have to be completely off the subject of coffee. If it's in the realm of coffee, if you want to learn more about milk science, if you want to learn exactly why, foam is different on, skim milk versus whole milk, or any other, bit of minutia that you see around you in the coffee bar, there are lots of places to look. Of course, the resource you should be tuned into is Cody's podcast, the Curiosity Daily podcast. We'll link to that in the show notes here. I would highly recommend you subscribe to that. A big thank you to Cody for joining us on the show and sharing his experiences with us and what he's learned about curiosity in this journey of hosting this Curiosity Daily podcast. You've done a lot to help us ignite our curiosity, Cody. Thank you. So now, if you want the transcript for this episode, you can go to keystotheshop.com, fill out the contact page, and click the box that says sign me up for the email list. And that will put you on the email list. Funny. And you will be signed up to receive the email on a weekly basis that has the transcripts. It has links that are also in the show notes, and also some bonus resources that I come across during the week that will help reinforce what we talked about that week, or bring in some new information that is related to helping you become a better coffee service professional. So again, go to keystotheshop.com on the contact page, and there you go. Now, if you want to reach out to me, you can do so by emailing chris@keystotheshop.com. It's CHRIS@keystotheshop.com. If you have questions, comments, or feedback about the show, I'm dying to hear them for sure. And also really want to talk to you if you are interested in working with Keys to the Shop Consulting to help you in your business and operations. You need somebody to come on site and help you assess your operations and give you some pointers and a report on how to, level things up. Or if you're just interested in signing up for some coaching calls with Keys to the Shop Consulting, all of that is available to you. Let's start a conversation about it. chris@keystotheshop.com. Well, that is it for our show today. Thank you so much. I hope you learned a lot about curiosity, and I hope that you pursue your curiosity more as a result of this conversation with Cody. Thank you again for joining me. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.